The room had been prepared for a routine palace briefing, but the Lord Chamberlain did not arrive carrying routine news. He stood beneath the royal crest, opened a crimson-bound decree, and announced a decision that instantly changed Catherine's position inside the monarchy. Senior courtiers stopped writing. Camilla's expression hardened. William remained perfectly still. The crown had not merely praised the Princess of Wales. It had granted her privileges no royal woman in her position had ever formally possessed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Catherine had entered the state apartments expecting a revised schedule of duties. The state apartments are Buckingham Palace's formal rooms, used for major royal meetings, ceremonies, and official receptions. Senior household figures, constitutional advisors, and principal members of the family had gathered believing they would hear changes to engagements. Instead, the Lord Chamberlain, the senior official responsible for coordinating major ceremonial and household matters, announced a transfer of real authority. The decree granted Catherine 4 unprecedented privileges. She could convene senior household meetings independently, enter protected crown archives directly, stand beside the monarch at designated state functions, and represent the crown without another senior royal supervising her. None of these powers was symbolic. Together, they gave the princess influence over information, decisions, and public representation at the highest level. Catherine tightened her fingers around the arm of her chair. She understood that praise could be accepted politely, but authority carried consequences. Every decision she made would now shape more than her own household. William watched her carefully, recognizing the burden beneath the honor. Camilla looked toward Charles, waiting for him to interrupt, narrow the decree, or explain its limits. The king lowered his eyes. He did not speak. His silence allowed the Lord Chamberlain to continue, and the queen consort understood that the announcement had reached the room with the monarch's consent. The Lord Chamberlain then revealed how the privileges had been approved. A confidential assessment had examined Catherine's service, judgment, public trust, and conduct during instability within the household. A confidential assessment is a private review used to evaluate whether someone can safely carry greater royal responsibility. The findings had been decisive, yet one detail remained hidden. William noticed a second sealed page beneath the decree. When advisors began asking questions, the official kept it covered with one hand. The prince realized that Catherine had not heard the entire decision. The Lord Chamberlain placed the crimson decree before her. She did not touch it. Across the table, Camilla removed her glasses, set them down, and asked Charles, "Did you know every word of this?" After the meeting, Catherine attempted to speak with her privately. Camilla refused, and told the king that the decree had begun with something the palace was hiding. But before Catherine could understand the authority she had just received, she had to understand why every person in that room seemed to believe the decree had chosen a winner and exposed a loser. The announcement affected 4 people in 4 painfully different ways. For Catherine, it was a burden disguised as recognition. For William, it was proof that patience had finally been noticed. For Charles, it was an admission that the monarchy needed strength beyond his own. And for Camilla, it felt like a door closing while she was still standing inside the room. The decree had taken only minutes to read, yet it reopened years of rivalry, sacrifice, and unspoken fear. Catherine had not arrived at this position through one dramatic victory. She had moved gradually from a closely managed newcomer into the family member trusted with delicate engagements, private reconciliations, and moments when the monarchy needed calm more than ceremony. Her office meant the formal role and responsibilities attached to her position as Princess of Wales. Over time, that office had become more than a title. It had become a center of emotional stability. William understood why the decision mattered. The prince had watched his wife protect the institution for years without demanding greater rank, louder praise, or public reward. Her elevation recognized that restraint. Yet he also knew the danger. New authority would place Catherine directly inside rivalries that had once remained beyond her reach. William found her standing alone beside a darkened window, still holding the unopened decree. When he asked whether she was pleased, she answered, I am frightened by how relieved everyone looked." Catherine then admitted that the privileges felt less like a reward and more like preparation for an emergency no one was willing to name. William tried to reassure her, but the future king shared the same fear. The palace did not grant unusual powers without expecting unusual strain. Charles faced that truth alone. The king sat with the briefing folder and recognized that Catherine's steadiness had become essential during periods of family tension and public uncertainty. Her discipline had protected the monarchy repeatedly, but that success exposed something painful. The institution now depended on her ability to absorb pressure without breaking. Camilla received the next blow through a formal note from the Lord Chamberlain. She would not automatically attend meetings called under Catherine's new authority. The Queen Consort would be invited only when the subject concerned her duties. For the first time, family position would not guarantee access. William received a different clarification. The Lord Chamberlain explained in a documented private conversation that the privileges were attached to Catherine's office and service record. That meant they could not be casually withdrawn through family pressure, wounded pride, or private resentment. The authority had institutional protection. One senior courtier then remembered when the idea had first emerged. It began on a night when Catherine prevented a private royal ceremony from becoming a national humiliation. Her decision had protected Charles, restrained William, and forced the palace to reconsider who truly possessed judgment under pressure. That relief had a history, and it could be traced to one private ceremony where Catherine made a decision that altered how the crown judged every person around her. Months before the Lord Chamberlain's announcement, the monarchy came within minutes of a deeply damaging public failure. A state remembrance ceremony was about to begin. A senior royal had refused to appear, and Charles was too shaken to decide who should take control. Courtiers argued behind closed doors while guests waited outside. Then Catherine entered the antechamber, listened for less than a minute, and made a choice no one had authorized, but everyone later admitted had saved the dignity of the crown. The crisis unfolded before the fictional Commonwealth Remembrance Vigil, a nationally televised ceremony honoring military families, international representatives, and relatives of service members lost overseas. A vigil is a formal gathering of remembrance, often marked by silence, prayer, and tribute. Its purpose was larger than royal ceremony. Hundreds of grieving families had arrived, expecting the monarchy to acknowledge sacrifices that had shaped their lives forever. Charles received distressing personal news minutes before the procession. The king became too shaken to lead the final private reception, and the household immediately divided over what should happen next. Some officials wanted the program shortened. Others argued for postponement. Every option carried danger, because any sudden change could expose the monarch's condition before a national audience. Camilla insisted that protocol remain untouched. The Queen Consort argued that altering the ceremonial order would reveal weakness and invite public speculation. William disagreed. The prince feared that forcing his father forward could lead to a visible collapse, turning a solemn tribute into a royal crisis no statement could contain. Catherine heard the argument, and then looked toward the families waiting in silence. She reminded the courtiers that their duty was not to protect appearances, but to honor people who had arrived carrying grief. Her words stopped the room because they shifted the question completely. The ceremony was not about saving the palace from embarrassment. It was about serving those beyond it. Catherine acted without formal permission. She entered the receiving hall, addressed the families personally, rearranged the vigil's order, and assumed responsibility for the reception while William remained with Charles. The princess coordinated officials, calmed anxious guests, and completed the event without allowing the public to see the turmoil behind closed doors. The Lord Chamberlain watched everything. That same night, he wrote a confidential memorandum, a private official record used to preserve sensitive judgments, stating that Catherine had displayed independent crown judgment under exceptional pressure. Those words later became the foundation for her unprecedented privileges. Camilla learned that her objection had also been included in the assessment. To her, the report did not merely praise Catherine, it recorded the moment her own judgment had been overruled. After the vigil, Catherine placed the ceremonial program on the table. The Lord Chamberlain asked who had given her permission. She looked toward the closed door behind which Charles was recovering, and replied, "No one had time to." The palace remembered Catherine's courage, but Camilla remembered something else, the moment authority moved across the room without asking her consent. The confrontation came before the palace could control it. Camilla requested a private meeting, dismissed the aides, and waited beside the fireplace with the decree already opened on the table. Catherine entered expecting a difficult conversation about duties. Instead, she faced an accusation. The Queen believed the new privileges had not simply rewarded service. They had created a second center of power inside the monarchy. Catherine had entered the room, determined to remain respectful. She soon realized respect would not be enough. Camilla had summoned her to a private morning room at Clarence's house, and insisted that no secretaries, advisors, or relatives attend. A morning room is a smaller royal sitting room used for private conversations and informal work rather than public ceremony. The Queen Consort wanted no official record, and no one present who could soften, repeat, or reinterpret what she intended to say. Camilla focused on the privilege that frightened her most. Catherine could now convene senior household discussions and represent the crown independently. That authority meant certain decisions could move forward without first passing through the Queen's office. To Camilla, the decree did not merely strengthen another royal. It weakened the hierarchy Charles had spent years trying to establish. The Queen accused Catherine of accepting power that could divide the monarchy into competing courts. Her voice tightened as she asked whether loyalty meant nothing once public approval became strong enough to replace formal rank. Catherine listened until the accusation became impossible to leave unanswered. Catherine replied that she had never requested the decree. The princess refused, however, to apologize for acting during the remembrance crisis, when everyone else had been trapped by fear, protocol, and indecision. She had stepped forward because grieving families were waiting, and Charles needed protection, not because she wanted influence. Camilla then revealed that she had appealed privately to the king before the announcement. In a recorded conversation preserved by Charles's secretary, she had asked him to delay the privileges. He refused to oppose the Lord Chamberlain's recommendation, saying the evidence of Catherine's service could not be ignored. The deeper truth followed. Camilla had proposed an alternative decree granting the Queen supervisory authority over Catherine's new duties. It would have looked like recognition, but every meaningful action would still have required approval from her office. Catherine finally understood that the resistance had never been about wording. It had been about control. Camilla pushed the open decree across the table and pointed to the line granting independent representation. Catherine closed the document gently, moved it back, and said, "This paper did not remove your place. Your fear is asking me to surrender mine." William entered before Camilla could answer. The prince announced that Charles had summoned an emergency family council to decide how the privileges would operate in practice. The argument had exposed the personal wound, but the emergency council would reveal something even more dangerous: the legal machinery that made Catherine's authority almost impossible to reverse. When the emergency council assembled, Camilla expected Charles to take control of the decree. Instead, the Lord Chamberlain opened the second sealed page. What followed stripped the argument of sentiment and replaced it with something colder: procedure, signatures, and constitutional authority. Catherine's privileges had not been created by one flattering recommendation or one husband's influence. They had passed through a protected process involving the monarch, senior household offices, and a service review designed to survive private opposition. Even Charles looked burdened by its permanence. Charles sat at the long table in his private library with Camilla, William, Catherine, the Lord Chamberlain, the private secretary, and a senior constitutional advisor. The private secretary is the monarch's principal official, responsible for coordinating decisions, correspondence, and advice at the highest level. No one had gathered merely to discuss feelings. They were there to determine whether the decree could be challenged. The Lord Chamberlain explained that Catherine's authority had been created through a royal service instrument. This fictional mechanism allowed defined operational privileges to be attached to a senior royal's office after an exceptional review of service, judgment, and conduct under pressure. It was designed to protect necessary authority from sudden family conflict or private resentment. Charles admitted why he had signed it. Repeated illness, internal division, and public strain had shown him that the monarchy could no longer depend on every decision flowing through one person. The king understood that confession sounded like weakness, yet refusing to adapt would have created a greater danger. Camilla suggested that William's influence had engineered the result. The prince reacted sharply. He told the room that Catherine had earned recognition during the very moments when he was occupied with protecting Charles. William had not manufactured her authority. He had witnessed the cost of her carrying responsibility without it. The second page ended the dispute. It carried signatures from the king, the Lord Chamberlain, and 2 senior crown officers. A protective clause stated that the privileges could not be altered unless Catherine failed in duty or voluntarily surrendered them. The constitutional advisor then confirmed the limit Camilla feared. The queen consort held no power to supervise, suspend, or reinterpret Catherine's authority. The princess remained accountable to the sovereign and to the decree's defined boundaries, but not to another royal household. Charles removed his reading glasses and rubbed his eyes. He admitted that signing the instrument had felt like confessing the family had reached a point where merit needed protection from emotion. The king opened a wooden case, removed the approval pen, and placed it between Catherine and Camilla. "I signed this because affection cannot be the only measure of readiness." Before the council ended, Catherine learned that her first independent assignment had already been prepared. It involved a patronage Camilla believed would remain permanently under her control. The authority was now undeniable, but nothing made its consequences more real than the first duty Catherine would perform without permission from the woman who had expected to oversee her. The decree became real the following morning. Catherine was instructed to lead a national summit for bereaved military families, a gathering previously placed under Camilla's senior patronage umbrella. The assignment was not designed as a humiliation, yet inside the palace, it felt like a visible transfer. Staff lists changed. Briefing folders were redirected. Invitations carried Catherine's authority alone. And when Camilla saw the revised program, she understood that the privileges were already reshaping the monarchy without waiting for anyone to recover emotionally. Catherine's first independent duty was the Crown Family's Forum at St. James's Palace, bringing together military charities, bereavement counselors, veterans, and relatives affected by service-related loss. A forum is a formal gathering where specialists and families share evidence, identify failures, and recommend action. The Lord Chamberlain authorized the princess to chair the meeting, approve its conclusions, and present the final program directly to the government and Charles, without another royal placed above her. Camilla received the revised order at breakfast. Her name appeared only beside an optional closing appearance, while Catherine's office controlled every major stage of the event. The queen consort felt the humiliation immediately, because household staff had learned of the change before she had. Authority had not merely shifted on paper, it had changed who received information first. Catherine considered asking for the assignment to be modified. She knew accepting it would deepen Camilla's sense of displacement and sharpen rivalries already close to breaking point. Yet surrendering the duty immediately would reduce the crown's recognition to an empty gesture. It would also betray the families who had trusted her during the remembrance vigil, when grief mattered more than rank. Administrative power followed quickly. Senior officials transferred briefing access to Catherine's new office, allowing her team to receive documents, approve schedules, and coordinate directly with government departments. The decree had created more than ceremonial precedents. It had created working authority. A confidential note warned her that resistance might not appear openly. It could emerge through delayed schedules, withheld invitations, and competing engagements, arranged to weaken her impact. Catherine understood the message. The next battle would be fought through inconvenience, not confrontation. Camilla closed the program, dismissed her dresser, and remained alone at the breakfast table. She had expected Charles to restore the previous arrangement once emotions cooled. His silence confirmed that he would not. At St. James's Palace, Catherine found a grand chair placed at the head of the table. She moved it aside and replaced it with an ordinary chair, matching those used by the bereaved families. The Lord Chamberlain watched from the doorway and understood again why the crown trusted her. That evening, Catherine requested a private meeting with Charles. She was not seeking more power, she intended to refuse part of what she had received. Yet the strongest proof of Catherine's character would not be how confidently she used the new privileges, but what she was prepared to refuse when no audience was watching. Late that evening, Catherine entered the king's private sitting room without William, without the Lord Chamberlain, and without a single aide to soften the conversation. Charles expected her to ask for clarification, staff, or greater protection from Camilla's resistance. Instead, she placed the decree on the table and offered to surrender part of what she had been given. The king stared at her in disbelief. At the very moment Catherine's power seemed secure, she chose to speak about restraint, family, and the danger of victory. Catherine had requested complete privacy because she did not want her decision interpreted as pressure from William, palace officials, or public opinion. The princess accepted the operational privileges, meaning the practical authority to call meetings, direct work, and represent the crown independently. But she did not want those powers used to humiliate Camilla or create rival royal courts competing for attention and influence. Catherine admitted that the remembrance crisis had taught her to act when permission could not arrive in time. It had also shown her how necessary action could become personal humiliation for someone else. She had protected Charles and served grieving families, yet Camilla had experienced that same moment as proof that authority could move around her without warning. The princess would not deny the queen consort's mistakes, but neither would she turn those mistakes into revenge. Charles finally confessed what his silence had hidden. The king knew the decree was justified. Catherine had earned the trust it represented. Yet acknowledging that truth in front of Camilla felt like admitting failure within his marriage and reign. He had spent years defending his wife's place, and now he feared that recognizing another woman's merit would be seen as reducing her. Catherine offered a limit. She asked Charles to add a personal protocol requiring her office to contact Camilla directly before duties involving the Queen's long-standing patronages were reassigned. A personal protocol would be an agreed rule of conduct rather than a binding legal restriction. It would preserve communication without weakening Catherine's independence. Charles rejected only one part of her proposal. He would not accept the surrender of authority. The king placed his hand over the decree before Catherine could slide it toward him. His voice broke as he said, "The person willing to give power back is often the person safest to trust with it." Charles promised to speak honestly with Camilla, instead of hiding behind silence. Catherine promised never to use her privileges as leverage, revenge, or a public display of superiority. Their agreement did not erase the conflict, but it changed its direction. Power would remain. Humiliation would not become its purpose. The next morning, Charles would stand beside Catherine at the Crown Family's forum, and one unplanned public moment would carry their private promise far beyond the palace. Their private promise settled the moral question inside the room, but outside the palace gates, the country was about to decide what Catherine's elevation meant for the crown itself. By sunrise, the decree was no longer a palace matter. Broadcasters interrupted their schedules, newspaper presses changed their front pages, and crowds gathered outside royal residences hoping to witness Catherine's first appearance under her new authority. Yet the moment that defined the public reaction was not the announcement itself. It was a single image from St. James's Palace. Catherine, kneeling beside a grieving military mother, while the official chair of precedence stood empty behind her. In that image, privilege looked unexpectedly like service. National broadcasters framed the decision as a historic shift from inherited proximity toward demonstrated capability. Constitutional commentators explained that Catherine's privileges created operational recognition without altering the line of succession, the formal order determining who inherits the crown. She had gained greater working authority, but William and the children remained in their established positions. The decree changed how service could be performed, not who would become monarch. Palace communications released the exact scope before speculation could distort it. Catherine could represent the crown independently, convene senior meetings, access protected archives, and receive enhanced ceremonial precedence at designated events. Ceremonial precedence means the official order in which royals stand, enter, or are seated during state occasions. The clarification stopped claims that she had been made co-monarch, but it confirmed something equally significant. Her judgment now carried institutional force. Supporters celebrated years of steadiness under pressure. Critics warned that rewarding one family member through documented service could expose the weaknesses of others who held higher formal rank. The argument cut deeply because it transformed merit into a mirror. Every compliment directed toward Catherine seemed to raise an unspoken question about those around her. Camilla watched the coverage privately. The Queen Consort heard commentators contrast Catherine's quiet authority with her own long struggle for acceptance, and the comparison wounded her. Yet she also understood that continued opposition would make the contrast harsher. Resisting the decree could now appear less like concern for order and more like fear of another woman's success. The Morning Chronicle captured the public mood with an empty ceremonial chair beside Catherine, beneath the headline, "She chose the floor, the privilege of service." Outside Buckingham Palace, military families held small white cards reading, "Merit serves." One bereaved father told a live broadcaster, she remembered why the crown was in the room. During the forum, Catherine lowered herself beside a grieving mother who could not stand to speak. An aide gestured toward the central chair, but the princess remained on the floor and listened. Rank waited behind her. Grief came first. The Lord Chamberlain later confirmed in a recorded statement that the decision rested on documented conduct during several private crises, not popularity surveys or pressure from William. Before evening, Camilla requested one final private meeting with Catherine. This time, there would be no accusation. The nation had delivered its judgment through one unforgettable image, but the story could only end when the two women at its center faced each other without titles, advisors, or an audience. The final conversation did not take place beneath chandeliers or in front of cameras. Camilla asked Catherine to meet in the same Clarence House room where their confrontation had begun. The decree was no longer spread accusingly across the table. It remained closed between them. Neither woman pretended the pain had disappeared, and neither offered an easy apology. But for the first time since the announcement, they spoke not about who had lost position, but about what the monarchy would lose if recognition became another weapon inside the family. Camilla spoke first. The Queen Consort acknowledged that Catherine's privileges were permanent, and that continued resistance would only injure Charles, divide the household, and make every future duty appear to be part of a private contest. The decree was the formal instrument defining Catherine's new authority, including independent representation, meeting powers, archive access, and ceremonial precedence. Camilla no longer questioned its legitimacy. She questioned whether their relationship could survive what it had exposed. Catherine answered without surrendering the responsibility she had earned. The princess confirmed that she would exercise the decree fully, but she would honor the communication protocol agreed with Charles whenever her duties crossed into Camilla's established charitable work. That protocol was a personal rule requiring direct discussion before shared responsibilities changed. It preserved respect without giving either office control over the other. Camilla then admitted the fear beneath her anger. She had spent years fighting for acceptance, only to watch Catherine receive public trust with a natural ease she had never known. The confession did not excuse her attempt to gain supervisory authority, but it finally explained why recognition had felt like replacement. Catherine refused to treat that honesty as weakness. She told Camilla that the crown had room for dignity without demanding one woman disappear so another could be respected. Authority did not have to become revenge, and service did not require humiliation. Camilla revealed that she had withdrawn her request to supervise Catherine's duties. Through a written instruction to her private secretary, she had also ordered her staff to cooperate directly with the princess's office on every shared charitable responsibility. Before Catherine left Clarence House, she reached for the decree. Camilla placed her hand on it first, not to take it away, but to turn it toward her. "It belongs with you," she said. "Then I will make certain it serves more than me," Catherine answered. At the next formal household meeting, Charles seated Catherine in the position defined by the decree. Camilla entered, met her eyes, and took her own chair without protest. William supported the change, while the king finally separated private affection from public responsibility. The announcement was not remembered as Catherine's victory over Camilla. It became the moment the modern crown declared that marriage, proximity, and tradition were no longer enough. Authority had to be supported by judgment, discipline, and service. And so the decree that began with silence ended with clarity. The crown had not elevated Catherine because she demanded power, but because, when the monarchy faltered, she had already shown that service mattered more to her than the privilege that followed. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.